Hello and Merry Christmas. Welcome to our first Geek 411 book club. You can find us at all of the social medias at One Geek 411. Join our Discord server to chat with us between streams. Email us at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out our show notes at our website, onegeek411.com, and watch our regular show on Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time, and find us later on YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I am Shanine, and I am joined by Emma.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And Cameron.
Why, hello.
Hey. And Chris.
Oi.
All right. And this book club, we are talking about Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Never heard of him.
Never. He's an up-and-coming author.
That's why the letters are dated in 1920s.
Sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah. It's taken him 80 years or however long.
You all sit on a throne of lies. So as we all know Tolkien. If you don't, you should.
I'd be surprised if someone didn't.
I would also.
Might be some of those Zoomers out there.
Yeah.
True.
Your parents have failed you.
Yeah.
But what else did he write?
Real question.
True. Pop quiz.
Lots of things.
Lots of things.
Specifically, all of the Middle Earth Legendarium. He's written a lot of adaptations of Britain lore, such as Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. But yeah, so much of his stuff has actually came out after his death relating to Middle Earth, such as Baron and Luthien, The Fall of Gondolin, Children of Hurin. All of those were edited from his, pretty much from his notes and records by his son Christopher, who also, may rest in peace, who passed away this last January.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yes. All right, so this book is a collection of letters written by Tolkien as Father Christmas to his children, starting in 1920 when John the eldest was 3 years old, and continued to write for over 20 years through the childhood of his 3 other children, Michael, Christopher, and Priscilla.
Also, when he wrote the first letter, Michael would have been like a couple months.
So Michael really enjoyed reading it, is what I hear you telling me.
Yes, yeah. Quick learner.
Tolkien's children, they have to be able to read.
Yeah.
All right, so what's everyone's first impressions?
I loved it. I didn't know it existed before this, and it was so fun to read and great in general. This is something that I would have loved as a kid to pull out every Christmas and have my mom or dad read to me every night leading up to Christmas, just a little bit or pieces of it. And it was a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either. Chris suggested it, and I was like, "What? Tolkien?
What is this?"
Yeah.
I've been given my impressions of this pretty much all month on our standard episodes. But no, I absolutely adore these. For one thing, these aren't my favorite thing about this is they weren't made to be published. They were just a thing he was doing
for his kids.
For his children, and they're so deeply personal and kind of intimate in that sense. I also just love how they get more complex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's literally the first letter is a paragraph, and then the last letters are mini novels.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going back to the personal too, you even see the reflection of real world events happening in the letters. He really put a lot of thought into them too. like, because they weren't meant to be published, but like then you see at some points him talking about, how families during World War II didn't have, a lot of money, so he's putting effort into getting them food or things. Like, yeah.
Yep, kind of like y'all. I hadn't heard of these at all prior to whenever Chris had suggested it, and
You're
so
welcome.
I found it like very cute. Like it's very just like that fun family tradition. Like I did the audiobook, so it was kind of harder for me to keep track of like when the letters were arriving versus when you can actually like see the dates on the page. But I really like the idea of like some of the years they're like, sorry, I'm late this year, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've been really busy, and I thought that was really cute. And it's this fun, like, I mean, to kind of what was said earlier, it's just that really goofy family tradition that is like super cute. And it's even like as the kids get older, they still like have these letters and they still have this fun memory of their dad. And I think that's really, like I said, I just think that was really cute and really fun.
Yeah. Okay, before we go to the next question, thanks to Chris for introducing us all to this magical Christmas book, and also happy birthday.
Yay!
Thank you. Big 30. It's great.
He sneakily shakes his head. No.
Advantage of having the video format now.
Yeah, we can do the visual gags.
Yeah.
Okay. How did everyone's family approach the subject of Santa when you were growing up?
We didn't really. Growing up, I mean, yeah, like you got gifts from Santa. But mostly everything, like they didn't like try to emphasize that he was real or anything. It was just like, okay, you believe it, I'm sure you'll get gifts from Santa.
Yeah. My mom, so she's a retired family practice doctor, and she had a patient who had a near death experience. I don't know all the details, but when he was in the hospital, he basically felt like Saint Nicholas. He saw Saint Nicholas in his dreams, who like told him to carry on like the whole mission of giving money to the poor and like just gifting all of those people. So he decided to become a Santa every year for Christmas, and he learned how to say Merry Christmas in all these different languages. And he started, my sister's birthday is actually tomorrow, the 18th, and he started showing up to her birthday parties to like just surprise her before Christmas at some point. So for a long time we had Santa coming to our house, and we got to like just, he would tell us all these fun little stories. He like wrote stories to tell people, and so that was like a lot of our big like Santa interaction. He just felt like Saint Nicholas had wanted him to do something with his life that was like basically ministering the Christian faith to people through the act of Santa in any way that he could. So that's what he did, and it was super cool.
Sweet.
I still receive gifts from Meemaw Claus, who is, of course, Santa's grandmother. So I have some historical inaccuracy things with these letters from Tolkien. I have it on good authority that Meemaw Claus is still around. And so, and so I don't remember us ever really like sitting down as a family and discussing it. I remember at one point, like when I was young, my mom like really went in on it, and of course I was like the oblivious kid, but like the letters from Santa, of course, arrived in different wrapping paper and things like that. And so why would they have the same wrapping paper? And that was something I was completely oblivious to as a kid. I was like, oh, presents. These ones are from Santa.
Yeah, it's like I
And,
only pay attention to the marker. It has my name and who it's from. That's all.
Yeah.
And,
Wrapping paper itself doesn't matter.
I remember at one point, like talking to my mom about it and being like, wait, you mean for the past couple of years, I've made sure that Santa still brings gifts in different wrapping paper and I haven't needed to? I was like, yes. Don't mind me.
It's great.
That's hilarious.
Too much effort. So much effort.
I mean, he wasn't receiving 4 or 5 page long letters in response to his own.
Along with fully illustrated pictures.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Everyone's bad parents compared to Tolkien at this point.
these pictures are amazing. Like, they're impressive.
Yes.
I want to frame all of them and hang them up on my walls.
I want to buy originals.
Imagine how expensive that would be.
I wouldn't want to buy originals. Those are
No.
things that need to stay with the estate.
Yeah. Please keep the originals.
Yeah, for me, we didn't really do Santa Claus in our household, but all of our stocking gifts always came from Santa, even though we 100% knew it was our mom and dad.
As someone who has a better idea, explain Boxing Day to us. Because this is not a thing we do in the US.
You don't do Boxing Day?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
No, it's like on calendars, or some calendars, but it's not something like we're like, okay, I know it's the
The only country
26th.
I know of that celebrates it, or doesn't, is us.
English speaking, we should say, but
English speaking. That's fair.
I
Like,
did not know that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I understand it's a big UK, and I like my correlation with it is like I know my Canadian friends celebrate it,
yeah.
but I don't know what it is.
Okay. I don't know, like, the historical origins of it or anything.
Because I
so
know he
think
references
it's
it.
just like,
I was like,
I don't know if it's just like it's the day after Christmas, so you're taking all the boxes out to the curb. Like that's what I've heard. But I don't know what the origins of it are. But yeah, it's like the day after Christmas. There's big Boxing Day sales. It's kind of like we have Black Friday, but Boxing Day was kind of our first big shopping day.
oh,
So it's like
There's
the
like a lot
Christmas
of
version
Boxing
of
Day
Black
sales
Friday?
and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, and then
it's where you go buy all the stuff you didn't get that you wanted for Christmas for yourself.
exactly.
These are the
Okay.
cards.
So it's a personal Christmas. is what you're saying.
Kind of.
The personal
Um,
Christmas.
Yeah, and in previous years, my extended family has still gotten together on that day. One of our traditions was to make turkey turnovers with all the leftovers of the previous day.
That stuff is good.
I'm on the Wikipedia now, and it just tells you there are competing theories at the origins of the term, and there's like no actual consensus of how it started. One such theory is that it originally was a day following, where ultimately it followed the tradition of giving money and other gifts to those in need. So more of like a community day, community Christmas day, I guess. After the family-oriented Christmas day, I guess. I don't know. Interesting.
Very.
I don't know why I never picked up in the U.S. How's the? It's like we were a colony too.
'Cause we got to go back to work.
Touche. Like, oh, we don't want to give them another holiday.
Right.
Just scratch
They
it.
already
Just
get
scratch
New
it. Don't
Year's
tell them.
off.
Don't tell them.
So we can't have 3 holidays in a week.
Or you
What would
can.
the banks do?
But we can.
All right. Have you read this book or author before?
Author, yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
I've read some of The Hobbit. I don't know. I don't think I've ever finished a Tolkien book.
They're massive. They're masterpieces,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. They definitely, like, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings take me a little longer because they are, like, much more dense in terms of language and content. So they take me longer in general, but they're absolutely worth it and worth the effort and time.
Yeah, the first and only time I've read The Lord of the Rings, I think it took me between like 6 and 8 months
Dang!
to read the series, and then the Silmarillion took me like a year, but that's because I put it down for like 5 months and was like, I can't
Right.
do this.
It's one that it's like it's actually technically much easier read in a sense.
See, Shanine, here's how we're on a different level. You said it took you 6 to 8 months
Yeah.
to read The Lord of the Rings. I'm like, that's about what it would have taken me for the first book.
Yeah.
Like,
same
that's
here.
where I was at. Like, you're like,
Same
and so I
here.
knocked out the whole series, and I was like, oh, yeah.
For The Lord of the Rings, I averaged a year per book because it was so dense that I would pick it up and do like a couple of pages, and I'd have to set it down again and go read something easier. Like, I just couldn't do all 3 books in 6 to 8 months. It's just impossible.
I
read-
read them in grade 7. I just
Yeah.
powered through.
So here's another point of reference. I read Ender's Game in ninth grade from an English class. I did not understand a single word of it. I was just like, I don't know what's going on. This is apparently science fiction, but I don't understand any of it. There's like something with politics. I just don't get it.
Whereas
It was way over my head for a 9th grader.
I read Lord of the Rings in 5th grade. All of it. So I read The Fellowship before the first movie came out, and then I read the other 2, the rest of afterwards.
Nice.
Yeah.
I could see
I was
that,
obsessed with Middle
Yeah.
Earth though, like throughout middle school
Yeah.
and in 5th grade. Like my librarian one day wasn't happy with me because I accidentally sent the entire Quenwell dictionary to the printer.
oops.
Do what you got to do.
Right? But but the librarian, like, it's one of my favorite memories. Is like, granted, I was an advanced reader at the time, and even then she's like, skeptic, yeah, whatever. Of recommending such an advanced book to me, but she's like watching me pick up like all these medieval fantasy books, and she's like, the movie's coming out, you might be interested in trying this, and I haven't looked back since.
Sold.
Yeah. I loved it. I did a book report like at least once a year on Lord of the Rings, just because it's like it was in my mind, and it was like when it was like read a book and do a book report on it. It's like they don't know I've read this, so I was just like, I'll recycle this. In a sense, like every year. And granted, all the teachers throughout even middle school were like, "You read this?" I'm like, "Yeah, 3 years ago, but yes."
Still. Yes.
Loved it. The movies were great too, for the most part.
My favorite scene is the tomato.
Get out. Take
Is
him
it-
off.
What?
There's a scene where one of the people is eating a tomato, and it's super gross.
In Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's Denethorn.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the movies in a while.
It's Return of the
Oh.
King.
Wait, no, I remember that.
Return of the
One of my-
King with
Oh, yeah.
Denethorn and Pippin.
That took me way too long to process.
The
Yeah.
Steward of
Get out.
Gondor
Yep.
scene.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. No.
My earliest memories of Lord of the Rings was doing a marathon of them at a 30-hour famine with my youth group. And I think I was in the middle of reading the series at that point.
But it has
And-
wizards in it. They let you watch that at youth group?
Our youth group is very nerdy. Very nerdy. One of the youth leaders from that group is like the reason I do D&D and tabletop games.
Sounds like a great youth leader.
Like, so that's one of my
Yes.
like biggest things is like there was a period, obviously, churches like attacked works like Tolkien and stuff. I'm like,
To
Why?
literally like reference Christian writings.
right. Granted, like he didn't write Middle Earth as an allegory,
No.
as per like C.S. Lewis's works,
Yeah.
which are a direct allegory to
Yeah.
Christian teachings.
Where in
but-
Narnia, you can pretty much lay it out scene for scene in
Right.
comparison.
Right. We don't actually see a lot of the primary Christian themes until you start getting into the major legendarium, like the Silmarillion and stuff. And then you start reading the Silmarillion, and you're like, this is a holy book.
Yeah.
This is literally written like a holy book.
Mhm. My beef, though, I was in the middle of reading the series and was telling someone, this is my first time reading the series. I'm really excited about it. And she said, oh, this is how it ends.
Got him.
Why?
I understand that it's like old and like if you see a spoiler, that's fine. But if I'm literally telling you this is the first time I'm experiencing this story,
Don't tell the answer.
this is like,
Or
Especially for
whatever.
like I don't expect everyone to have read Lord of the Rings.
No.
Like
this is
I
like 15 years later. And I'm
expect people to
still
be
holding
familiar
on
with the
to that
Still
movies,
bitter.
grudge.
but yeah, I would be too.
Yeah.
Especially because
Yeah.
it's an epic series.
Yeah.
It's like that's one thing you should never spoil is a book, especially like this was what I would be consider like classic literature. It's something that should be guarded against spoilers for the most
Mhm.
part, outside of obviously you chose to watch the movies prior to reading the books.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But even then, like the movies don't spoil everything. Like there's lots of details in the post story because where the movies kind of end in like the montage with kind of what's happening. There's a lot of extra details in terms of like Merry, Pippin, Sam, and stuff that aren't mentioned in the movies, which makes this ending in the books just so much better.
Yes. Okay, but back to letters from Father
Yes.
Christmas.
Anyway.
Now that we've gone on like a Lord of the Rings tangent.
Not the series we read.
Maybe a future book club.
Maybe.
Would you like a chapter at a time?
yeah, that's like a whole new podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we know, I
Okay.
mean, the Prancing Pony's been recording for like 2 years now, and they're just like getting through the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this question from Carolyn, aka my mom. Hi, Mom.
What was her Twitch ID?
Her Twitch, CE Heart or something like that.
I just remember when she was in here. Who's this? She seems familiar with us.
Yes.
It's like,
Several
oh,
times.
it's apparent. No burping.
Hey, what was your favorite letter?
All of them, no.
If you had to pick one.
1934.
What was 1934, Chris?
I think it was 1934. Where's my notes? Oh, 1933. Sorry. It's the
What's your
year.
favorite? And you can't even remember what year it was.
I have it noted. I'm just off by a year today, okay?
Yeah.
Mostly just because like there's some great references in this. in this letter. It's also the introduction of bat riding goblins. Um, we get certain other things that get explained later in later years. Father Christmas blowing his golden trumpet. We get to see the gnomes, and he mentions the Goblin War of 1453. There's just so much starting lore here that gets expanded on, and this is kind of the starting year for like the epic letters, as I'm going to refer to them from here. And yeah, and I also just like looking back at this because like Tolkien doesn't tend to do anything like haphazardly, so there's like a lot of debate on what he's trying to reference in 1453. And we're like, I don't know what happened in 1453. We know it was the end of the 100-Year War with France. Is also the fall of Constantinople and and certain other things. But it's like, is that really what he's referencing? We figured it would probably be more like UK history. But yeah, there's some great things in 1933.
I'll say again, since I did audiobook, I don't really have like as good of divides of which letter was which year. And so I'll just say anyone when Polar Bear got to be Goofy.
So all years.
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah. So basically the more that Polar Bear was involved, I could like record my enjoyment based on how involved Polar Bear was.
Yeah.
Or if it was a letter where like Polar Bear was off doing something or was busy for part of it, I'm like, I don't care about the first half of this. But
So
then Polar Bear showed up and I'm interested.
I will give, to jump off of that, 1936, when Polar Bear decides to take a bath. He just wanted to take a bath, but then he ends up flooding the entire place.
Oh, that was a really good one. I liked that one.
Yeah, when you fall asleep.
So
baths are just that relaxing.
Yeah, baths are just that relaxing that you just end up flooding the whole place. And so Father Christmas has to get one of his elves to write the letter because he's off trying to deal with the flooded house. So that was one of my favorites because it was like a super short one later on, but he was just like, yeah, bear flooded the house and we're going to have to go deal with it. And you get one of the first introductions of an elf, like up until that point or around that point, you hear from Father Christmas and the polar bear, but then you get to hear from an elf. Abereth. So,
well, he first writes in 1933. Yeah. Although in 1936 is like his formal introduction, where he's like, "I've written to you before, but this is me."
This is me. Hi. So that was one of my fun ones.
I liked 1932, in which our dear North Polar Bear gets lost in the caves for a very long time. We have to go save him and then find goblin history, and apparently the cave bear has all sorts of history he knows of like ancient men and
That's the one with the like cave art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's also the official intro that goblins exist.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm assuming people have translated the letter that Polar Bear sent in whatever the alphabet is, in the goblin alphabet. And by people, I mean like internet people. If not Chris.
No, I have not.
Okay.
Like, I'm a nerd, but
I thought about it, but I just didn't have time because I like that kind of stuff.
It's something.
So basically, for the viewers who haven't read the book, there's this one letter that Polar Bear sends in an alphabet from the caves, and you later on get a decipher so that you can go on and decipher it. And I love doing that kind of thing just because I think it's fun, but I didn't get around to it. So I would like to, at some point, decipher this random letter from Polar Bear.
It'll be a random thing. What did you do this week? I deciphered the Father Christmas Polar Bear letter.
Yeah.
In Goblin.
I enjoyed it. This is what it said. It took me 3 hours.
Okay. Does anyone have a least favorite letter?
I mean, the shorter
What?
ones that are just like too busy.
Bye.
Bye. I mean, like I like that they're included just for continuity's sake, but
Yeah.
I mean, they don't really add or take away from anything. But
I can't really remember any that like jump out as like,
this was bad.
yeah, like
Yeah.
this was like this was a weird turn or something like that. Like nothing
Yeah.
really like jumps out as that.
Yeah, I don't think there's nothing really to dislike. There's just
Yeah.
letters that are slightly less exciting than others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, favorite character.
Snap polar bear.
Polar bear. Hands down.
Yeah, he just offers the best little wit.
The
He has a lot
giggles.
of wit in some of the letters too. Like as
Yeah.
we get later
Yeah.
on, and there's more
There's little
characters.
commentary, moments of commentary.
I like the
and then there's-
stories about his nephews though, Pascu
Yeah.
and
I was just going to say his
Volkotuka?
nephews too. There's one point where Father Christmas is like, they're growing up so much like their uncle. And I'm like, yeah, they are.
they're just like all over the place. I just love the
They're gonna be
chaotic
the next-
energy from the
Yeah.
bears.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I love that in this, like, bears in general are depicted as more goofish and, like, good intentioned. Whereas in a lot of literature, if there's a bear type character, it's like almost like a bouncer type where he's strong and tough. But here's like, I've got good intentions. I'm trying my best.
Most
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah. All the time.
I do love North Polar Bear. I also quite liked the Man in the Moon. He's
Yeah.
not in it a
Mhm.
lot, but there's like a
He's-
surprising amount of side lore about the moon, which I found interesting.
Right, like through like 1926 through like 1930, he comes up periodically, and you're just like, I really like this really random edition of this relationship between Father Christmas and these other characters.
Is there like a connection there in like other like Christmas stories or myth? Is there like a connection between those characters? That I enjoyed it, but it definitely seemed super random. And so I wasn't sure if it was like a reference I wasn't getting.
I mean, there's a lot of references I don't get.
Yeah.
Right, but I meant like
True.
specifically the Man in the Moon one is what I'm talking about.
Just
Is that like a
probably just fantasy characters kind of in general.
Yeah. Or,
I
like-
was just curious.
Like one thing I wondered is like, does this coincide the specific moon events that happened in those years?
I mean, was that something that their family was about?
I don't know. Like
Like-
there's specifics. Like it's like I feel like this
Yeah.
is something you would notice in the night sky if you're going to mention it in a letter like this, and that's why
Yeah.
and you're trying to explain it to your children, in a sense. So
Yeah.
I was curious about that. I couldn't find anything relating to that in terms of world history, but I don't know.
And it could just be that.
You thought it would be a fun character.
Yeah, a fun character, or like those years one of the kids was asking a lot of questions about the moon, or like there was something, because like 3-year-olds ask a lot of questions, toddlers in general ask a lot of questions, so it could have been that one of the toddlers had a phase where they asked all these questions about the moon, and then Father Christmas just so happened to mention the Man in the Moon in his letter. Like,
Yeah,
again,
that makes a lot of sense.
these letters weren't meant to be published. Like, he didn't write them as a book. He wrote them as letters to his kids originally, so there wasn't
Right.
a lot of that foreplay.
So we have the kind of breakaway from his traditional intentionality, like in everything else that Tolkien did, potentially. It's also very possible he is very just insightful and intentional about these letters too. It's just hard to say.
Yeah.
There's not enough information.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I was wondering if it was something else. Like, I mean, and it could even have been, I mean, as a writer, he could even have been thinking of doing something in a future year and then just changed his mind. And
Mhm.
we didn't get more Man in the Moon. And
Yeah, I was a little disappointed when we didn't get more Man in the Moon.
Yeah.
A little bit. I understood because we got some awesome other characters.
Yeah.
All right. Any least favorite characters?
Father Christmas. I'm just kidding.
How dare you?
Oh, okay.
I feel like I have to do the hot take since like Sherlock was like my least favorite character from Sherlock.
Bold
not really.
opinion to have before Christmas, Cameron.
Yes. So I want to be clear for both Santa and Meemaw Claus. That was a joke. Did not mean it. I'll say, I mean, in general, I enjoyed all the characters. If I had to pick a least favorite, probably the secretary.
I love him.
Yeah.
Just because like at that point in the story, I just felt like, oh, okay, you're just. Okay.
He was.
It was like I didn't
introduced
feel like it
pretty
was
late.
needed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like his introduction just because he's introduced in the epics, as I mentioned I was going to refer to them. And I like him because he just offers so much more detail just as the secretary, just as kind of the record keeper. And he's like, he has like a much finer writing as a result and can just portray more. And also he's like, here's 9 pictures instead of the standard, just a picture of the house kind of situation.
I'm going to illustrate an entire book for you.
So I really like Ibareth and just his attention to detail in telling these stories. Because I feel like without him, we just wouldn't have as like, here's an event that happened. Okay.
Yeah. And like as much as I love getting into like the more of the lore of it, I guess for me it was kind of when it diverges away from being these like silly Christmas stories into doing this like, well, we have to do world building and we have to do these things, and as much as I enjoyed that, it just kind of it felt like a tonal shift, and so that's I said to me it didn't feel necessary because I mean it makes sense from a children's age perspective of they're now getting older and this isn't like they're not looking for the same like short silly Christmas stories anymore, and so it definitely makes sense in that regard. But
one thing I'd be interested in seeing is seeing the children's letters themselves.
Yeah.
So like you can see the context of their writing and Father Christmas's responses or the North Pole responses in general. So I'd be really intrigued to see something like that. Especially because like the epic portion is obviously directed more toward, since it's later, John and Michael have obviously aged off and they're mostly addressed to Chris and Priscilla. And then even the really late letters, just Priscilla. Yeah, I'd like to see their letters because I want to see what they write to Santa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in regards to Ilbereth, I agree with both of you. I think it was interesting to have like more insight into like how the workshop works and just kind of the behind the scenes more world building, but I feel like he came in late and we didn't get a chance to get to know him, so I'm not quite as invested in his character as the others.
Makes sense.
All right. We have mentioned the beautiful illustrations. Do you have a favorite?
Emma's probably going to mention the one of the stair. Yeah.
This one. It's of the polar bear falling down the stairs. It's towards the beginning, and that's pretty great. The polar bear falls down the stairs with all these packages, and some of them get broken. But it's just a silly picture that definitely made me laugh.
I'm not sure if this is necessarily just my favorite illustration or just the commentary around it, but it's this one.
Yeah.
Because it talks about polar bear drawing the trees, and he's like, they're the best part. And then someone was like, they look like umbrellas.
Doing the audiobook, I definitely feel like I missed out on the cool drawings.
You did.
And so like I did some like Google picture stuff, but I don't
100% can
Yeah,
tell
I don't
you
have them
missed
like
out.
in the context of where they were in the story.
Yeah.
So
This is one of the few books
they were the ones I saw were cool though.
I would say like go back and read it through in a book to see the pictures, because like in the copy that Chris and I have, there's also like you get pictures of the envelopes and the letters themselves, and
Right.
like
So you
just
also
all of
see
these
how
different. You see
Tolkien
how
was
yeah.
disguising his handwriting with a shaky hand, which is referenced in the actual letter portion from Father Christmas, or the fact that Polar Bear mentions his fat paw and his thick letters and stuff and things like that, or when it does improve that he learned to hold a pen in his mouth, which improved his handwriting and stuff. I love all those just little pieces so much.
You get to
Emma,
see
what
the
else were
little
you gonna
things
say?
that they reference. Just that you get to see the little things that they reference in the actual letters themselves. And they're just like, you can even tell that Tolkien put a lot of effort into the letters, in the sense that like every sentence starts with the fancy big letter. And like there's a whole fun squirrely swirly thing at the end. Like he put a lot of effort into these letters, even if they're short. So
Yeah, and with the envelopes too, some of them have like fake stamps on them.
Yeah, polar
Those
stamps.
were cool. Yeah.
polar stamps, yeah.
There's also one picture early on with the introduction of the Man in the Moon. He's even got a little face on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this one. It's a small one, but it's a picture of Father Christmas. It's just basic, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I just like the illustrations in this in general. So
yeah. I don't have a book to show. I don't know if someone else is able to look them up, but in 1926, this is when Polar Bear set off 2 years worth of Northern Lights in one go.
That in general was one of my favorite references throughout it, was the Northern Light stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I just love it. Just kind of fiery color.
Yeah. And I love that concept too, that the Northern Lights are like these firework type things. Just that it's something that the North Pole controls. So
yeah.
2 years worth of Northern Lights.
Yeah, and then how he mentions it through the next 2 years, like, well, we still don't have the Northern Lights this year.
Yep.
Or he references as the tap for turning on the Rory Borealis.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that.
Yeah, I definitely recommend getting a physical copy at some point, or seeing or going through, because like in the letter portion too, like all the interjections and stuff that are presented in reading, like they're little footnotes, because it's like Polar Bear reading the letter before it gets sent. He's like, they're just these little interjections in like in the little on the edges of the page.
Oh geez, at one point he refers to the secretary. Oh, where is it? Oh, it was super funny.
Oh, it's in likely what you're referring to is 138, the poem in verse 1.
He calls the secretary a hilarious name. That's gonna bug me until I find it. Oh, he calls the secretary a rude little errand boy as a footnote. And I just love that. You're a rude little errand boy.
There is a PDF of this linked in our Discord book club channel, and it does have pictures of the letters and the illustrations. So feel free to go there and scroll through it.
I was thinking there was a PDF somewhere, and I was trying to find it beforehand, and for some reason I didn't think to look in the book club part of the Discord. So good
Come on,
job,
man.
Cameron.
Yeah. So
I was
the
like, I
one,
know I've seen it, but like, why can't I find it?
Where did I see it?
the piece I was thinking too when Polar Bears talk, referring to the elf is, so year 138 is written exclusively in poem and verse form, which is super interesting. But he calls he refers youth. So he says, so the whole piece, because it kind of is important. He's like, absolute rot. I have not got a pain in my pot. I do not eat turkey or meat. I stick to the sweet, which is why, as all know, I am so sweet myself. You thinuous elf, goodbye. And then the elf responds, he means fatuous. No, I don't. You're not fat, but thin and silly. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. That was a great one. I had fun reading that one.
I guess while we're on it, any other favorite quotes?
I don't have a specific one as much of like I enjoyed the like social commentary, especially as you get into the later ones in the 40s. And so I thought that was really interesting that just kind of how Tolkien brought in the real world events into the letters.
Mm-hmm.
That they're not they're not like abstract fantasy. They're very much still like talking about what's going on at the time. And so I really enjoyed that part of it. Especially, yeah, it's kind of like what we've talked about with some of the other ones. It's like it seems like this could be a reference to something that we don't get, like talking about the moon, whether it's from the other kids' letters or from stuff that was going on that year or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting. To just kind of hear him talk about the war through the lens of these letters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that too. That Santa wasn't removed from the war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like, for one, I just saw this, that Santa trains his own reindeer. And also, more of as a general concept, you can see, like, through the chunk of years where he's also working on The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, you can see some of that seeping into his Father Christmas work with, like, some of the Polar Bear's writing. He starts using like a lot of the same like lettering, if you will, that shows up in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. That Tolkien, like just little bits and pieces of it seep into the writing in general. That he just sort of tries out, if you will. So.
It's not the most quotable book because it's just story.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of my favorites that kind of wraps it all up is Father Christmas talking about the North Polar Bear says, I should hardly feel it was Christmas if he didn't do something ridiculous.
Yeah. I would say the same thing if I were Father Christmas.
One of my like at least favorite pieces though is kind of toward the end, the acknowledgement of the age of the children. So ultimately, or I guess ultimately, Priscilla, a very happy Christmas. I suppose you'll be hanging up your stockings just once more. I hope so far I have still a few little things for you. After this, I shall have to say goodbye. More or less, I mean. I shall not forget you. We always keep the old numbers of our old friends and their letters, and later on we hope to come back when they grow up and have houses of their own and children. It's like so bittersweet.
Yeah.
It's like just saying, okay, you don't believe in me anymore. I see how it is. But also just like instilling a sense of possibly carrying on tradition when you have children of your own, or anything like that. But also just kind of bringing close a chapter and relationship of Father Christmas with the Tolkien household.
Mm-hmm.
I just did some Google searching, and so Priscilla is 14 or 13 or 14 when that letter, for that last letter.
Right. Yeah, she was
So-
born in 1929.
Yep. In June of 1929. So, yeah, so she would have been 14.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was like an interesting tidbit. Actually, she knew, like, no longer believed in Santa a few years before. It's probably one of the youngest ones, but I also like just in general, like regarding their family stories, that in general, as each child kind of aged out, they still worked together to keep that magic alive for the younger ones.
Yeah.
Although like Priscilla early on, like found Tolkien writing the letters.
Ooh.
But went along with it because she enjoyed it so much. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just such a sweet story.
I feel like if I found out early on, it would still be a very enjoyable Christmas tradition to keep on for a while. Because it's just like
It's like I want to know about this goblin more.
Yeah,
Come on.
I want to know about the bat flying goblins and what Polar Bear does next anyway. Like, I want to know what happens next. Please continue. Don't let my sudden knowledge of this hinder you from continuing. I am enjoying this. Please, let's go on. It just seems like it's a very unique family tradition in some sense around Christmas time that seems worth the effort.
I think this is more important, like for these kids as they're older, because they're like, yeah, look at these letters my dad wrote because he's an awesome author.
My dad is literally J.R.R. Tolkien. Like, yeah.
All right, we have touched on this a little bit, but what did you think of having multiple narrators?
I thought it was fun to get different perspectives throughout the years. Because, again, like, something exciting or dramatic happens pretty much every year, almost exclusively because of the polar bear. And so getting to see those different viewpoints in this sort of storytelling, like, a lot of the events are pretty exclusive to that year, but get referenced in other years, except for like the goblins and all of that. But just getting to see an event from a different point of view was fun and exciting, and the interpretation would shift. So
I enjoyed it, and I know y'all kind of referenced it earlier with like the actual like the writing on the letters itself, where people would interject. But from like the audiobook perspective, it was cool to hear like the voices of the other characters pop in and do that side of it. And so I really enjoyed that side of that multiple narrators, where it was not just one person, like even on like an individual story standpoint, it wasn't just one person telling it, but it was kind of the you'd get to hear the other voices still involved in telling the story.
yeah. Well, in that, like, I was kind of talking about that a little bit earlier, where this would be a fun book to pull out at Christmas and read a little bit of to your kids every night, because then you could, like, do different voices for different characters, and, like, they could look at the pictures, and, like, you would get that sense of both the, like, looking at the pictures and the, like, listening to it, and having your mom or dad, like, do different voices for each one. So
Yeah, I thought it was fun seeing how the different narrators presented themselves compared to how they talked about each other.
yeah.
Father Christmas is all like, "Ugh, the polar bear just causing trouble."
Wasn't me.
And the North Polar Bear's like, yeah, that, or
In
like,
my defense, I
he's
just
just
wanted
old.
a bath.
He's just old and doesn't like fun.
Right. I also really like it when he throws in things. It's like, well, you may not like it,
Rude.
but the children will find this funny.
Yeah. What did you think of the world Tolkien created? I didn't really expect there to be a lot of world building, and then a few letters in, I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There's
Oop,
Tolkien.
there it is. There,
Yeah.
his inner writer is coming out.
Yeah, I think.
He can't not.
Like he just throws in like random history pieces like from the lore. One of my favorite things is like 1923 when he's talking about his age.
I've
Like that
lost
second
count
letter.
of how old I am.
He's like, I'm 1,924. No, 7. And my favorite thing is like ultimately, so that was the either 1920 or 1923 letter, is that puts him like 3-4 BC, which is the most scholarly at the time estimation for the actual birth of Christ compared to Dionysius' view of the Common Era of 0 AD. And I just like that he came into being directly connected to Christ's birth, is the perception.
That's great.
Didn't know that. That is interesting.
And he references a couple times in the other letters his age, and just like,
Yeah, I definitely think it was. I mean, the world building was not totally expected, but very enjoyable. Because I felt like, again, these letters, he was having fun writing these letters to his children, and he was creating that world for his children to get immersed in, and you can see that in the writing and how he creates the worlds, and like the fact that the northern lights are like these firework type things that you turn on and off, and like it's very clear that he just had a lot of fun, and that in turn made the world building so much more enjoyable to read and get into.
I also really like Father Christmas's family history.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
From Grandfather Yule to Father Christmas, both named for St. Nicholas. They're not St. Nicholas, but they're named after him. I really enjoy that. He also references Christopher's name in one of the letters. It's like, and Christopher, whose name is much like my own. I love those little pieces. Although I am still confused about who the brother in green is.
Me too.
Oh, I wondered about that.
He references a couple times his brother, and I have a hard time tracking down like the history of Christmas figures and locating who this guy is or is supposed to be based off of.
Belschnickel. You mean impish or admirable?
But he references him. He's where he gets his green trousers to help ward off goblins and things like that. I'm like, I want to know who this brother is. I want to know who he's based on. Because we got Father Yule for the pre-Christmas era, for the, pre-Christmas period, essentially. And then we have Father Christmas being born alongside Christ. And then he takes over Christmas, the Christmas season. Who's this brother? I need to know.
I mean, is there in like, because Father Christmas is a holiday associated sort of lore figure. I mean, it could be possible that the brother in green is a reference to another sort of holiday associated figure that's not necessarily Christmas related. I don't know who that or what that could possibly be, but
I don't know.
I don't know.
I couldn't find anything. I tried. There's just a whole
Leprechauns?
lot of speculation.
Father Christmas's brother is a leprechaun?
What's possible? Maybe, I don't know.
Conspiracy theory?
Yeah, so listeners, if you're well versed in Christmas lore or good at researching, let us know.
Or feel like researching.
Because I need it.
We must know.
But yeah, as far as world building goes, I wasn't expecting a lot. And then in 1929, he mentions his first language other than English.
Arctic.
Polar bear speaks Arctic. We find out his real name is Karhu.
Which is
And-
like Nordic for like bear.
Makes sense.
That I
Does
was
make
able to find
sense.
references to. I was like, oh, it's just like so on the nose at times. You're just like, done.
Did the Google Translate?
Yeah. I'm not going to make you look this one up.
Which also explains like the like rune alphabet, like how he writes his T's and stuff.
Yeah.
And he also like
Mhm.
misspells like all the other words. I
Mhm.
love polar
Yeah.
bear. I also like in 1929 he explained like he kind of offers the explanation for how he's able to deliver all the presents. And he plays off that there. He's like, I'm happy it's not the same time everywhere in the world.
Yeah. That was my reasoning as a kid when I learned about time zones.
That was my
Santa
yeah.
can do it because there's time zones,
He
right?
technically has 12 hours.
Yeah,
he
like,
technically has 24
he can
hours.
do it, guys. Time zones, they're a thing.
You start here, and as the Earth rotates,
Yeah.
he delivers them all, sits in the
He's
air,
gotta
lets
be
the Earth
real
rotate
smart,
above him.
but at this point, he's got the system down.
I think that's also the era where he like kind of brags about how many stockings he can stuff in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, like 2,000 or something ridiculous.
Some still astronomical number that would be physically impossible.
Yeah.
Nothing's impossible with Christmas cheer.
Well, that's what he mentions. His magic's most powerful on Christmas Eve. In that same year. I gotta find it. $28.
While he's doing that, I really enjoyed, like from that world building's perspective, I really enjoyed when we got to see the like the Father Christmas's family side of the world building. Like, of course, like later on we get into like the goblins and these other, like the penguins show up and things like that. But
They came from the South Pole because they were worried.
yeah, they're just here to help, and I was like, oh, that's cute. And but I really enjoyed like that family side of it, of like, yeah, I'm Father Christmas, but I have like my family, we're all here, like that kind of thing, or we all kind of care about kids and that kind of thing. And I really enjoyed that side of the world building, that it's not just like while it like it is Father Christmas, there's also these other people out looking out for others.
Yeah.
Was there anything in the book that surprised you that we have not mentioned yet?
I think how much it branched out beyond just the concept of Father Christmas and elves. Like, there were goblins and bat fighting goblins and goblin wars and, like all these random things you wouldn't really associate with Father Christmas or Santa Claus, but that somehow work incredibly well. And you're like, oh yeah, they really like trains. So of course they would break into the cellars and like take all the train pieces. Like it just makes sense. Okay. Unexpected, but I like it. So how much, I guess for me, just how much it branches beyond that initial concept of Father Christmas and the little tiny elves.
I love how small a piece the gifts actually play.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. At least in like growing up or in our age, it's like all about what Santa's gonna bring you and what are you asking from Santa and everything. Whereas this is a very relational approach. It's like I'm actually friends with Santa.
Yeah.
He asks about my life, I tell him. I ask about his life, and I get all these amazing stories as a result. And I love that. That like it's this relational piece instead of just I asked Santa for this, but he brought me this instead. But he said if I ask him for that next year, I can possibly get it, kind of thing. It's like okay, less consumer based, which also like in our copies, is Tolkien's quote about Christmas commercialism. Well, here comes Christmas, that astonishing thing that no commercialism can defile unless we let it. And like that approach feels so heavy throughout his letter approach in writing his letters.
Yeah, and I like that when gifts are mentioned, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna bring you a whole pile of gifts. It's like, I'm bringing you this one thing that I really hope you like.
Yeah.
Or like, I think I know that you're gonna like this. I'm
I
really
sent you some
excited.
crackers.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Or like, sorry I didn't get you this thing you asked for. There's been a worldwide shortage, or you know.
Or if you get the wrong thing, I'm sorry, the packages got messed up thanks to Polar Bear.
Thanks to Polar
If you know
Bear,
a boy
I
who
mean,
got a doll, or
thanks to mom and dad who just couldn't tell the difference.
I forgot, I didn't mark them before I wrapped them. I don't know which is which.
Sorry. We're gonna blame it on Polar Bear.
Okay, but speaking of polar bear and gifts, here's a part that I like from 1928. It says, "Love to John, who must be getting very big as he doesn't write to me anymore. So I simply had to guess paints. I hope they were all right. Polar Bear chose them. He says he knows what John likes because John likes bears."
Checks out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it works.
I just thought that was so cute.
I think
feel
Polar
like-
Bear even has like a PS in one of the letters to like a stuffed bear that Priscilla
Yeah.
owns.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like in their family, there was probably a couple of years where Polar Bear was definitely a scapegoat for like issues that just happened on Christmas. Oh, that must have been Polar Bear. Our bad.
There's also a year for Priscilla where it's like, here, like Santa just gives her money. He's like,
Yeah.
go find a book you like.
Yeah. Don't know what you want. Here's money. Here's cash.
And I think there's a letter that is addressed on Boxing Day, and they're like, "Sorry, we just found this in our lobby today."
Yeah. Oops, we forgot. Or it was a busy year. Sorry.
Yeah. In terms of like a little surprise, like this isn't like something crazy. I was surprised that there was like direct reference to The Hobbit in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
In 1937, he goes, "I was going to send hobbits, mostly second editions, but I thought you had lots, so I'm sending another Oxford fairy story."
Right, which is
Like-
obviously, for those that aren't aware, 1937 is the year The Hobbit was first published.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I just thought that was really fun, just to kind of get that like, again, as like a surprise of just having it be self-referential to his own work. I thought was really cool. And
Yeah.
it was not something I was expecting. Because and this kind of gets to what I talked about earlier about like the referencing the war and stuff, of it not being like, it's not that Santa is self-contained. Santa
Yeah.
is very much a part of this world,
Yeah.
obviously. It's really cool to see that type of references to those.
Hey, did you notice any biblical or theological themes?
Santa's age.
Yeah.
Father Christmas's age, I guess I should say. I really just like that reference in the time frame. By far one of my favorite things.
There's a handful of like, I don't know if social justice is the right word or the right term, but there's a handful of the like, it's a, like I just had one. What year is this? I think it's 32, 37, scrolling up, 32, where Father Christmas talks about how he just has, he's not able to bring quite as many toys this year because so many people are in need of food and clothing and things like that, and kind of getting into that like more of like the deeper meaning of the season. And that idea of looking out for others. And that's definitely one of those that like obviously is a big part of Christianity, is that looking after others. And so that was one of the big ones that jumped out to me.
Yeah. And I think sort of jumping off of that is like Tolkien using the letters as a way to like not only like have a tradition with his kids, but also as a way to educate his kids in the years where they may have been more fortunate than others.
Yeah.
That like they could have gotten, wonderful Christmas presents while the rest of the world was struggling through a war or famine or financial troubles. And I think that's something that stood out to me, was he was using the letters as a way, kind of like what Chris was saying, like Christmas isn't all about the presents. It's about family and relationship and storytelling and getting together and being thankful. Like in the end, Polar Bear may have messed up all these things, but he's Polar Bear and he's part of the family and we love him, and Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without Polar Bear. Like using that outlet as a way to sort of show his kids a better, well, not necessarily better, but a more giving side of Christmas rather than a receiving side of Christmas.
I think going off that as well, I can see themes of forgiveness and grace. Like, no matter what Polar Bear does, like, he's never sent away or even really gotten in super huge trouble. Like, he's there to stay, and they love him, and they fix whatever happened together. Like, he can break the North Pole through Father Christmas's house, and they're just like, I guess we're building a new house now.
Multiple times.
Yeah. Multiple times.
We just got it erected again. Just had
and
to
here
climb
we
it.
go.
But I mean, like, he even acknowledges, like, Father Christmas notes, is like, it's worth the hassle because there's still no way I could do all this by myself.
Yeah.
So we deal with the issues and move on. Also, what do you write to the kids about? I packed up the sleigh.
If everything was fine, then there'd be nothing to write about.
Yeah. And I think I also noticed a theme of joy. Even during the war years, when Father Christmas says things are hard and their storerooms are growing bare, they're still having the snow people and Polar Bear's nephews over for parties and having fun together.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Ain't nobody starting a North Pole party.
Because the North Pole party don't stop.
Exactly. Year-round celebration.
The midsummer nap.
Or like the all-summer nap
Oh, yeah.
that the Polar Bear mentions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Father Christmas slept like all summer this year.
Yeah.
right. Is there anything else that stood out to you from the letters?
Also, we should mention Polar Bear really did enjoy beating up on the goblins.
Yeah.
True.
Those
Battle
were some
Bear.
fun years.
Battle Bear. Now we know where C.S. Lewis got the idea.
Yeah.
I'll say in general, like, there are certain years that it kind of stands out that there's not a lot of Christmas in the letters. They're kind of just like, they're Christmas in the sense that they're about Father Christmas, but there's not a lot of like overarching Christmas themes or anything like that. It's just kind of like, yep, here was how the past year went. Here's what I've been up to for the past several months. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for your letters, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
And so, and of course, that's not all of them, but there's a few that was kind of what struck me. Yeah, not as a good thing or a bad thing. We're just one of those that I was like, oh, this is interesting.
And how does Tolkien's Father Christmas compare with other pop culture representations of Father Christmas / Santa / etc.?
I feel like this representation is much more in depth and thought out than a lot of other representations, and much more caring. Like a lot of, at least, like modern day, like you have like this Santa Claus movies with whatever that actor is, where he
Tim Allen?
basically gets forced into the position of Santa Claus and he's not happy about it.
The legal clause of Santa instead
The
of.
legal clause of Santa, rather than like.
You're not going to say it, Cameron?
I have made my stance on this one now.
Like, this is a much more jolly and caring. It's the like much more jolly and like caring and giving side of Saint Nick and Father Christmas that you typically, at its most simple definition, Father Christmas is. Like, the base idea of Father Christmas is that he gives all of these people presents without ever really having a friendship with them. And this, I feel like a lot more than other representations, goes into that more and builds on that concept of him a lot.
I'll say, kind of building off that, this version of Father Christmas feels a lot more like a person.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like there's a lot more depth rather than just that one note kind of thing. And so you kind of like you get into the more of that backstory, more of that like what the more of the year is about, rather than just the here's my getting ready for Christmas. Like that's what I do all year, like that kind of thing. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that like more like recent pop culture, they try to weave in this idea of Christmas spirit, but still make it about the consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
It's still so much about ultimately. It's like the main theme is this Christmas spirit of spreading joy and love throughout the season, but then as a result, the miracle happens and you get just what you asked for from Santa. Like, which is hard, especially like when you come from families that obviously can't afford to provide like the fancy things for Christmas or the exact model you wanted or the high-end electronics that are in such demand around the holidays. And so, yeah, I really like this more so than even like just that relational aspect saying, hey, I can't wait. We're out of stock on that too. It's like, or anything like that. But also this is just a simpler time. Toys were simpler in general. So I think that, yeah, the pop culture aspect is a hard piece to contend with when dealing with Christmas themes.
Well, and I think a lot of like modern day representations of Santa are like he can do anything with the snap of his fingers. Like he has all of this magic. Whereas this Father Christmas is like there's sort of magical things that go on, but he doesn't necessarily run around snapping his fingers to make things happen, which makes it a much more enjoyable experience of the concept of Father Christmas.
Mhm.
Okay, what do you think a modern adaptation would look like? And what references would you make in your own Father Christmas letters?
COVID. I'm just
COVID.
which which something that Tolkien did was he referenced, child elements. He referenced mumps, whooping cough, things that weren't immunized against at the time. Which I thought was super cool. I was like, oh. It might have been a reference because one of the children actually contracted the illness too. Something we're not necessarily sure of, but yeah, obviously we're going to cite the pandemic.
I mean, I feel like for me, this is one of those things that I would do if I had kids. And then in that, a lot of what I referenced would depend on the personalities of my kids. Like, what's going on in their lives? What things are they asking questions about on a daily basis? Like, for me, a lot of it would, like, there would be things like world events like COVID, or if there's wars or just big world events, I would reference them. But like a lot of like the like more personalized details would just be personalized to what my kids were interested in, or sort of being drawn to, I guess.
Also probably be via email.
Not nearly as much fun.
Not
No,
as much fun.
That's not as much fun.
Also be a lot harder because at least there's like an excuse for kind of having Santa do like hand-drawn pictures. Whereas like nowadays children would be like, I need a real picture.
Yeah.
I need proof. Don't just draw it. That's fake.
Yep.
Santa, I'm FaceTiming you right now.
Yeah.
Can you like live stream this so to show me?
Yeah. Live stream your workshop.
But I mean, like
really
that's something we
to
have.
Emma's point, I think one of the hard things of thinking about what this would look like from me in a modern day is that not having kids. And like I know Emma referenced that earlier too. Like you can very much see like Tolkien like parenting his kids through the character of Father Christmas. And it's kind of hard to think of like what that would be. I really liked, Emma, what you said about like, well, what are their personality? Like, what would they be?
Yeah.
What are the things going on for them?
Yeah.
And like, I think that's really interesting to think about. Cause of course, like I have the things of like, okay, well, I would want to hit on like equality for people, like, especially in like our modern American culture right now with like police brutality and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know, is like when is the age to bring that up with kids? I don't know. I'm not a parent, and I'm sure a lot of parents don't know, and are just trying to do their best and
As
like,
soon as possible.
and so
Yeah.
like there's that whole side of it too where it's like,
Well, if your kid's a sociopath.
oh,
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Oh.
Just kidding.
This isn't Crusader Kings 3. And or whatever that game is. Is that, I think that's the right name. But and so like, yeah, so I think of those things that like, oh, these are what I would want to hit on, but it's like I don't know how to necessarily approach that with younger kids either.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like a modern day adaptation of this would be very difficult to pull off well, to have it done well, if it were directed to a more general audience rather than like a small group of like your 4 kids, or like maybe your 4 kids and their cousins, or you know, however many nieces and nephews you have, like you're within your family group of people, like, because you can't make it as personal to how those kids are experiencing the world. And like you can make it in some ways to represent the general way of how kids see the world, but I don't think a lot of the messages would come across as well because you couldn't tailor it to like the questions one kid is asking versus the questions another child is asking, or just the general life events of one family in comparison to another.
Mm-hmm. I would say Polar Bear would still flood the house, though.
Yeah, he would still flood the house, absolutely.
It's like
Yeah.
Polar Bear is still the hero.
He
still
is
gotta
still
have
the
it.
hero.
You might have a resurgence of goblins, maybe something else.
Yeah.
Elves and creatures.
Yeah.
I think it's just so much harder. Like, I feel like you probably would stop it. Like, I feel like the age of disbelief is a lot younger
Mm-hmm.
now. Just with access to information. Your children are going to fact check you if you try this. That's all I know. You're just going to be like, I Googled this, Dad.
It's not real.
Then you get to teach them not to believe everything they read on the internet.
Yep.
Except for that,
Good lesson.
it's like, oh, I did. It's like, you taught me well, Dad. This is a reputable source. I checked it. Darn it.
I have 3 different sources. Plus a
And a Snopes article.
Notes article.
Darn it.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Really cute, really enjoyable.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, highly recommend.
Your kids would like it. Anyone's kids would like it.
It's
Or
it's
else.
just a great piece to have on the shelf, regardless.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah. I enjoyed it. It's great for kids and adults.
such a random piece.
But delightful. It's a
Also, just to
delightfully
throw
random
out
piece.
a couple other dates. So obviously these letters were written from 1920 and 1943. Notable, obviously, we get references in 1939, the year the war started. Obviously, World War II didn't end till after he stopped writing the letters as well. But also, World War I was just prior, like a few years prior to the first letter. Obviously, with Tolkien returning home, getting married, and having his first child, also just right after the war hit. World War I had ended. Also, look up lot bricks. They're kind of cool.
Lot bricks?
The first gift he references, Lot's bricks.
I did look those up.
Kind of cool. I like them. Also, I had to look up who Beatrix Potter was. You know, there's someone that's going to read this and be like, is Tolkien a Harry Potter fan? And then I also wondered, it's like, was Rowling referencing different names from history?
So
as
these
a
are
result of
basically
this?
Lincoln Logs, but not.
But better and more
But better.
designs.
I want some. Just so that I can avoid doing work.
But
These
building.
look
I
fun.
think.
But building things. I'm building things instead of doing my homework. Oh, these are fun.
Okay, here's a fun final question. What's your favorite Christmas gift you have ever received or given?
In my head, I went straight to the trampoline that we got one year. Because my sister and I begged our parents since like August for months to get us a trampoline. And they kept on saying no trampoline, or it's like all summer, no trampoline, like you could fall off and hurt yourself. And they had bought one us months before Christmas and had just hidden it away to give us at Christmas. And
It's like you can't use it till spring.
you can't
Got
use
him.
it till spring because we're in the middle of rainy Seattle weather. But it was like we were so convinced that they just weren't going to get us a trampoline. And then we got one on Christmas morning, and it was so exciting, and we got a lot of use out of it. It was like falling apart, and then we'd repair it, and it would fall apart again, and we'd repair it over and over and over again because we just used it so much. And it, like, we had sleepovers on it, we had youth group on it, we had, like, it was so exciting because we were just convinced our parents wouldn't get us a trampoline. But we did get one, and it was super exciting. So lots of memories attached to it, too.
I don't know. I got my mom a KitchenAid.
Nice.
It was probably one of my favorite gifts it was like the first major like gift I was able to give my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And she had always wanted a KitchenAid mixer. So just like being in a place where I can give that to someone so important to me is the best gift I've ever given.
I don't know. I think nothing like super specific jumps to mind, which I kind of feel bad saying. But like, I definitely remember like growing up, like getting like really cool Legos and things like that. And like there are definitely some where like I remember like being with like I'm gonna say extended family, but like uncles and stuff like that, and like building Legos together and like those types of things. But like in terms of like nothing like super specific jumps to mind. What about you, Shanine?
Books.
That's no surprise.
Motions generally in the area of books.
Books.
Yeah, I don't know. More specifically, when I was younger, I was collecting the Mandy series, and there was one year that I got like 4 or 5 of them. And that was very exciting.
I remember one of my childhood friends growing up loved the Nancy Drew series, which there was like hundreds of them, basically. And like that was something she would ask for every year. Like she would just give her parents a list of the Nancy Drew books she didn't have. So her bookshelf was this all yellow Nancy Drew books. So
Now I love getting socks.
yeah, socks are great.
Especially fun socks.
Yeah.
All right. Our next book club will be January 28th, and we will be reading Treasure Island.
Woo, adventure.
Woo!
Yay.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. This is a classic that I have not read yet, so
Same.
I'm excited.
Treasure Island, I feel like I've read like the abridged version, like the kids version of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm really looking forward to getting in and finding out, like seeing what like reminds me of what I've like, oh, it's like, oh, I remember this. And then there's so many, of course, other implementations of that story and like adaptations and stuff. And so I'm really excited to read the original like in its fullness.
Yeah. I remember picking up the original a couple of times as a kid and like trying to read it and just like giving up because I was just like, this doesn't make any sense or whatever. But I'm looking forward to it now as an adult who has a longer attention span and is actually interested in it now.
Yeah, I've tried to read this multiple times. I'm like, nope, not really fantasy. Like, not fantasy enough for me. But I'm excited to read it now. Have more mature tastes.
Now there's a reason to read it.
Maybe.
You see these pinkies out when we drink.
Have you read this? It's a classic.
And with this being an older book, it is likely easily found through your local library, and we will post a link in our Bookcord channel and Discord as well. So,
Pirates.
Pirates.
arr.
Also, be aware we will be hosting this entire book club. Speaking
Next
like
Monday.
pirates.
Our matey. What is a pirate's favorite letter of the alphabet?
Challenge accepted.
You'd think it was the C, but it's really the R.
The next Monday, we will be doing our 2020 top 5 at our normal podcasting time. And so everybody come back for that. And we'll wrap up this really weird year.
Yes.
Super weird year.
I don't know what was different about it.
Dunno. Went to a lot of parties like normal.
I don't go to a lot of parties normally. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
exactly. That's the point.
It's like my life didn't
That's
change
the
much.
joke.
Went to the exact same number.
Just could not go to conventions.
Alrighty. Thanks for joining us in our chat of letters from Father Christmas. We are First Geek 411. You can find us on all the socials. Join our Discord server and chat with us. You can email us at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Remember to watch live on Twitch and find the videos on YouTube after. Rate and subscribe on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Check out the show notes on our website, onegeek411.com. Check out our sister podcast, Faith, Trust, and Pixie Dust. And I am the Hoot and Howl on Twitter and Hoot and Howl Tales, Tales on Instagram.
I'm
I am-
Himar Whittle.
I am not prepared with an I.
And I am not so foreign.
It's been a great week.
Wash your hands.
Merry Christmas.
Did a good book.